Professional basketball organizations face complex challenges when managing diverse personalities and competing interests within team environments. Recent developments have revealed significant tensions affecting team chemistry and competitive performance, highlighting the critical importance of effective leadership and organizational culture management. Post-game interviews have provided unprecedented insight into internal team dynamics, with veteran players acknowledging persistent division within their organization. These revelations demonstrate how inadequate leadership can allow minor disagreements to evolve into substantial organizational problems affecting on-court performance and workplace environment. Before we get into that, salute to AC Nation. He made a video yesterday talking about the Natasha Howard play, where Natasha Howard decides that she'd rather rub up on Ezi Magdebor's leg. I don't know what's going on. Oh, that was Ineka Ogulmike, excuse me. She checks out Ineka. Oh, Ineka, are you okay? Are you okay, sweetie pie? Are you doing okay? Much more care, much more concern, The concept of fragmented team culture emerged during recent press conferences where established players described teammates operating as separate entities rather than unified competitors. This characterization suggests fundamental breakdown in communication protocols and shared objectives that typically define successful athletic organizations. Previous organizational leadership had implemented various team-building activities designed to foster unity and collective purpose. These initiatives included recreational activities, group challenges, and structured social interactions intended to develop interpersonal relationships beyond basketball competition. The effectiveness of such programs depends largely on consistent implementation and leadership commitment to cultural development. When organizations experience coaching transitions or personnel changes, maintaining cultural continuity requires deliberate effort and strategic planning from management personnel. Current leadership appears to have underestimated the importance of maintaining established cultural practices while implementing their own strategic vision. The abandonment of proven team-building methodologies without adequate replacement systems has contributed to observed fragmentation and internal discord. Much more worry than any time Caleb Clark's been knocked to the ground, any time Aaliyah Boston's been punked, any time Lexi Hull's been beat up, Sophie Cunningham's been beat up, any more concern about somebody on the other team than from her own team. Very interesting. Natasha Howard, she couldn't walk away. She couldn't find it in her to walk away. In fact, Gabby Williams said, Natasha, you know this isn't your team, right? She gives her a little touch. She's like, veteran leadership traditionally serves as a stabilizing force during organizational transitions, providing continuity and institutional knowledge that helps maintain cultural standards. The departure of experienced players who previously served these roles creates leadership vacuums that must be addressed through alternative approaches. Recent incidents during games have highlighted the extent of internal divisions, with players demonstrating greater concern for opponents than teammates during physical confrontation. Such behavior patterns indicate fundamental breakdown in team loyalty and protective instincts that typically characterize cohesive athletic units. The observation of players prioritizing interactions with opposing team members over supporting their own teammates suggests profound organizational dysfunction extending beyond normal competitive disagreements. This behavior represents abandonment of basic team solidarity principles that form the foundation of successful athletic programs. Management responses to internal conflicts have proven inadequate for addressing underlying cultural problems. When organizational leadership fails to establish clear expectations and accountability standards, individual agendas often supersede collective objectives, creating destructive competitive environments. Media interviews have revealed the depth of internal fragmentation, with players openly discussing separate factions within their organization. The willingness to publicly acknowledge such divisions indicates either desperate attempts to generate change or complete breakdown in organizational conformity and professionalism. The characterization of teammates as existing on separate metaphorical islands demonstrates how individual priorities have replaced collaborative objectives. This geographic metaphor effectively illustrates the emotional and strategic distance between players who should be working toward common goals. Every single team. I absolutely understand. On every single team, team players and teammates are going to be different. You people are going to get on with better with some people than others. But at the end of the day, if it's a bad enough thing that one of your players is coming out and saying it needs to change, clearly, Clearly it's not a good thing. Clearly it is having some effect. Successful athletic organizations typically feature clearly defined leadership hierarchies and communication protocols that prevent the formation of competing internal factions. The absence of such structures allows personal preferences and individual relationships to override professional obligations and team objectives. The identification of distinct personality groups within the organization reveals how unchecked individual differences can fragment team unity. While personality diversity can strengthen organizations when properly managed, it becomes destructive when allowed to create competing allegiances and conflicting priorities. Some players appear focused primarily on competitive excellence and professional achievement, maintaining traditional athlete priorities regarding training, preparation, and performance improvement. These individuals typically respond positively to coaching direction and organizational expectations. Alternative groups appear more concerned with social dynamics, personal relationships, and non-basketball activities that may distract from primary competitive objectives. When such priorities conflict with performance goals, it creates tension between different approaches to professional athletics. How much will affect, we don't know. We're not in the locker room. But they never said that last year. It was never said, like, she's not questioning the locker room. Not saying there's locker room issues, because there's a big difference between a locker room not being super close and there not being issues. And everything about the fever last year was protect the locker room, protect the locker room, protect the locker room. And it doesn't sound like the locker room's in a good spot. Even last year, even when they were losing games, the presence of players more interested in social activism and political expression than basketball excellence creates additional complexity in organizational management. While individual expression deserves respect, it can become problematic when it overshadows professional responsibilities or creates workplace conflicts. Coaching leadership has failed to establish clear boundaries between acceptable personal expression and professional conduct expectations. The absence of consistent standards allows individual agendas to proliferate without organizational oversight or accountability measures. Some team members appear primarily focused on entertainment value and social media presence rather than competitive achievement. While personality and fan engagement have value, they become problematic when they replace dedication to basketball excellence as primary motivations. The development of romantic relationships within professional organizations creates additional complexity for leadership management. When personal relationships affect workplace dynamics or professional decision-making, they require careful oversight to prevent disruption of team operations. It seemed like a locker room was in a good spot. Something clearly has happened. And let's be real. I don't think it's Sophie Cunningham butting heads with the players that were already there. I doubt that's happening. Like, it just does not seem like a good situation. And to be honest, did a Wnba situation could have had a hugely negative effect. Overall on the team. Because young players entering organizations with existing cultural problems face particular challenges in understanding appropriate professional behavior and team loyalty expectations. Without proper mentorship and clear organizational standards, they may adopt dysfunctional patterns as normal professional conduct. The coaching staff's management approach appears inadequate for addressing complex interpersonal dynamics and competing individual priorities. Professional sports require leadership capable of establishing clear expectations while managing diverse personality types and personal relationships. Administrative leadership has failed to fulfill fundamental responsibilities regarding organizational culture management and personnel oversight. The explicit promise to protect team chemistry and surround key players with appropriate personnel has not been achieved through actual management decisions. The contrast between public statements about cultural priorities and actual organizational outcomes demonstrates disconnect between administrative rhetoric and practical management execution. When leadership makes specific commitments about cultural management, failure to deliver creates credibility problems and undermines future change efforts. Be real. A locker room that's tight certainly loses one of their leaders, and they could be out there playing the blame game. And I'm not saying there are locker room problems with the Indiana Fever, because I'm not, because that's not what she said. That's not what she said, but there's a big difference between a locker room having locker room problems and a good locker room. Or a good, or even a winning locker room. There are big differences, because let's be real. I don't know if last year's a winning locker room, but there was vibes. Previous coaching regimes apparently maintained better cultural discipline despite potentially less sophisticated strategic approaches. The comparison suggests that tactical expertise cannot compensate for fundamental failures in team management and cultural leadership. The current situation illustrates how organizational change requires comprehensive planning that addresses cultural continuity alongside strategic innovation. When new leadership abandons proven cultural practices without adequate replacement systems, it risks destroying positive elements that contributed to previous success. Recovery from cultural fragmentation requires acknowledging existing problems while implementing systematic solutions that address both individual behavior and organizational structure. Band-aid approaches that ignore underlying dysfunction rarely produce sustainable improvement in team chemistry or competitive performance. Effective cultural rehabilitation typically requires establishing clear behavioral expectations, implementing consistent accountability measures, and developing communication protocols that prevent the formation of competing internal factions. Such changes demand sustained commitment from organizational leadership. The identification of specific individual roles within dysfunctional team dynamics provides framework for targeted intervention strategies. Understanding how different personality types contribute to cultural problems enables leadership to develop appropriate management approaches for each situation. Long-term organizational success requires balancing individual personality accommodation with collective cultural standards. Teams that successfully integrate diverse personalities while maintaining unified objectives typically outperform those that allow individual differences to create destructive competition. The vibes are good. The vibes do not seem to be good right now. And again, it's not like there's a big difference between the vibes not being good and there being locker room issues. And I'm not going to go as far as to say that, because saying there's locker room issues is a big, big accusation to make. But at the end of the day, this is not good. This is absolutely not good. Like the Indiana fever. The public revelation of internal dysfunction often represents either calculated attempt to generate organizational change or complete breakdown in professional standards and confidentiality. Either scenario indicates serious leadership failures that require immediate and comprehensive response. Professional sports organizations that fail to maintain cultural unity typically experience declining competitive performance, increased personnel turnover, and reduced external credibility. The combination of these factors can create downward spirals that prove difficult to reverse without significant leadership changes. The current situation serves as case study in how administrative promises without corresponding action plans can undermine organizational credibility and employee confidence. When leadership fails to deliver on specific cultural commitments, it affects both internal morale and external perception of organizational competence. Contemporary professional basketball organizations face complex challenges in maintaining team unity while managing diverse personalities and competing individual objectives. Recent public statements from veteran players have revealed concerning trends regarding internal cohesion and collective focus within high-profile franchises. Post-game commentary from experienced team members has provided unprecedented insight into internal dynamics that typically remain confidential within professional sports organizations. These revelations suggest fundamental challenges in team chemistry that extend beyond normal adjustment periods following personnel changes. The characterization of teammates as existing in separate spheres rather than functioning as unified competitors indicates significant breakdown in organizational culture and collective purpose.